You know that feeling when you wake up in the morning and the first thing you notice isn't the day ahead, but how heavy everything feels? Not dramatic, not overwhelming, just heavy, like your body got rest, but your mind didn't. You check your phone, scroll a little, maybe stare at the screen without really reading anything. Messages are there, people are talking, life is moving, but you feel slightly removed from it, like you're watching it from a small distance. For a long time, you might have told yourself you're just lazy, or tired, or unmotivated, that something about you just isn't as strong as it used to be. But what if this isn't laziness at all? What if it's something much quieter, something that slowly settles in without you even noticing? Here's what makes this fascinating. For years, most people thought depression had one clear look: sad all the time, crying, staying in bed, not functioning. And yes, sometimes it does look like that, but more often than people realize, it looks very different. Sometimes it looks like someone who still goes to work, still answers messages, still shows up to family events, still laughs when everyone else laughs. Someone who seems completely fine, but inside something feels different, not broken, just dimmer. A lot of people who experience depression don't walk around feeling intense sadness all day. Instead, they feel a quiet distance from things. Music doesn't hit the same. Food doesn't taste as exciting. Conversations feel harder to stay fully present in. You might notice that things you used to enjoy now feel like something you have to push yourself toward. Not because you hate them, not because you don't care, but because the spark that used to pull you in feels softer now. Here's the part most people miss. Your brain is always trying to protect you. That's one of its most basic jobs. And when it senses too much stress, too much pressure, or too much emotional weight over a long period of time, it starts adjusting. But it doesn't always do it in loud, obvious ways. Sometimes it does it quietly, gently, slowly. It starts turning the volume down on everything. Think of it like a dimmer switch in a room. Instead of switching the lights off, it lowers the brightness little by little. And at first, you don't really notice. You can still see, you can still move around, but the room doesn't feel as warm anymore. The colors don't feel as strong. Everything looks the same, but it feels different. This is where it gets interesting. When that emotional volume lowers, it doesn't only affect the painful feelings, it affects the good ones too. Excitement feels quieter, motivation feels weaker, even happiness can feel distant. You might still smile, you might still laugh, but it fades faster than it used to. And sometimes you notice that and start wondering what changed. You might find yourself thinking, why don't I feel the same way anymore? And that question can sit in the back of your mind for a long time, because from the outside, nothing looks wrong enough to explain it. You're still functioning, still moving forward, still doing what needs to be done, but inside, something feels different, and it's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't felt it. There's a reason this feels so confusing. Depression often doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't knock loudly on the door. It slowly settles in, a little more tired each week, a little less interested in things, a little more distant. Because the change is gradual, you don't always notice when it starts. You just wake up one day and realize life feels flatter than it used to. This is where it gets psychologically deeper. When the mind feels overloaded for a long time, it starts trying to save energy. It does this without asking you. Simple things begin to feel heavier, not impossible, just harder. Getting out of bed, replying to a message, making a decision. Even small choices can feel like they take more effort than they should. And then there's the quiet voice that follows, the one that says you should be doing more, that you used to be more active, more focused, more present, that other people seem to handle life just fine. That voice can make the whole experience feel even heavier, because now it's not just the tiredness, it's the pressure too. A lot of people who experience depression become very good at hiding it. They learn how to smile at the right time. They learn how to answer, "How are you?" without letting the conversation go deeper. They keep showing up, keep doing what's expected, keep playing their role. And over time, that becomes normal. To everyone else, they look calm, reliable, quiet, steady. But inside, there can be a sense of distance that's hard to describe, not just from other people, sometimes from yourself, like you're not fully the same person you remember being. You might think back to a time when things felt easier, when laughing felt natural, when you looked forward to things without having to force the feeling. Here's something many people don't talk about. Depression often feels less like sadness and more like numbness, like your emotional range has gotten smaller. You still feel things, but they don't reach as deeply. Good moments pass by without staying with you. Bad moments don't always break you either. Everything just feels flat. This is where it gets even more layered. You might start pulling away from people a little. Not because you don't care about them, not because you don't love them, but because being around others takes more energy than it used to. Conversations can feel draining. Plans can feel overwhelming. Even the idea of leaving the house can feel like too much some days. So you stay in more, you keep to yourself more, and then the guilt comes in. The feeling that you're becoming distant, that you're not as present as you should be, that you're letting people down. And that guilt can sit quietly in the background, adding even more weight to everything else you're already carrying. There's a reason this feels so heavy. Many people who experience depression are still thinking deeply, still caring deeply, still noticing everything around them, sometimes even more than before. But instead of those thoughts turning into action, they stay inside. You think about calling someone, but you don't. You think about starting something new, but the energy isn't there. You think about explaining how you feel, but the words feel too complicated. And so it all stays internal, quiet, unspoken, private. Over time, that quiet distance can start to feel normal. You get used to it. You learn how to live with it. You go through your days, handling what needs to be handled, keeping everything moving. And sometimes you don't even realize how much you're carrying until you have a moment where everything feels too still, too silent, too heavy. This is where it gets really human. Depression isn't always about one big event. It's not always about one moment that changed everything. Sometimes it's many small things building up over time, stress that never fully left, pressure that stayed longer than expected, disappointments that stacked quietly, responsibilities that kept growing, emotions that didn't have space to be felt. The mind can carry a lot, but it can't carry everything forever. And when it reaches a certain point, it starts adjusting. It slows things down. It reduces intensity. It tries to protect you by making everything feel less sharp, less overwhelming, less painful. But when it turns the volume down on pain, it also turns the volume up on joy. And that's why life can start to feel distant. You might find yourself looking at things you once cared deeply about and wondering why the feeling isn't there anymore. You might remember how excited you used to get about certain plans, certain goals, certain people, and now, even though you still care, the feeling is softer, quieter, harder to reach. And that can make you question yourself. You might wonder if you've changed, if you've become less passionate, less driven, less alive somehow. But what's often happening is not a loss of who you are, it's a shift in how your mind is protecting you. Here's something important to understand. People who experience depression are not weak, they are not broken, they are not failing. Very often they are people who have been strong for a long time, people who kept going, people who handled things quietly, people who carried more than they let anyone see. And sometimes the mind just needs to slow down. It doesn't mean you're giving up. It doesn't mean you're not trying. It just means something inside you is trying to manage the weight in the only way it knows how, by reducing the pressure, by lowering the intensity, by creating a kind of emotional quiet. If you've ever felt disconnected from yourself, like you're not fully the person you remember being, you're not alone in that feeling. Many people move through this experience without ever talking about it. They go to work, they talk to friends, they smile in photos, and at the same time, they feel like something inside them is harder to reach. And the strangest part is, life keeps moving. The world doesn't pause. Days pass, weeks pass, and you keep going with it, even when everything feels a little heavier than it should. But even in that heaviness, there is still something steady inside you, something that keeps showing up, something that keeps trying, even on the days when it feels quiet, even on the days when you don't feel much at all. And maybe that's something worth noticing. Because behind a lot of calm faces, behind a lot of normal days, there are people carrying feelings they can't always put into words, people who are still here, still moving, still trying, even when it feels slow, even when it feels distant, even when it feels quiet. And sometimes, just understanding that can make the experience feel a little less lonely.